So joining us now is Peter Schweizer, who is the foremost expert and researcher on all things Biden corruption. He is the president of the Government Accountability Institute and author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Red-Handed. Peter, welcome back to the program.
Great to be with you, Charlie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Peter, your research is fabulous. It's impressive, it's thoughtful, and you really did a lot of work on it, obviously, and work that other people did not do. So I'm just going to kind of allow you to riff and to walk our audience through it. What do you think is going on with this Biden document scandal saga, and how, if at all, does it connect with the Biden crime syndicate's foreign deals?
Great question, Charlie. I mean, to me, the Biden document scandal is sort of the typical bureaucratic approach which is basically avoiding the bigger scandal and going off on this little sort of technicality. So what do I mean? We have now known for quite some time, it's not been disputed, it's clear in corporate records, financial records from China and Hong Kong, elsewhere, that the Biden family got some $31 million from 4 Chinese businessmen, beginning when Joe Biden was vice president of the United States. And those 4 Chinese businessmen who gave these tens of millions of dollars to the Bidens all have links to the highest levels of Chinese intelligence. So one of them, who Hunter Biden on the laptop calls the super chairman, his name is Che Feng. At the same time he was pouring money into the coffers of the Biden family, was business partners with the Vice Minister of State Security, responsible for foreign espionage. I could go through the other 3 businessmen as well, but they have similar types of ties. This is a massive issue and a massive problem that the mainstream media has largely ignored, frankly, completely ignored. The Biden family does not dispute, does not want to discuss it. And now you have the document scandal erupt, and the issue is really over the handling of classified material. I'm not meaning to minimize this, Charlie, but from the standpoint of the larger scandals facing the Biden family, it is relatively minor. And my concern is that we will have Republicans and others sort of go off the trail on the documents, which does need to be investigated, but do it at the expense of this larger, more fundamental question, which is, why did the Bidens get tens of millions of dollars from these Chinese businessmen when they performed no discernible service? They provided no product.
Yes.
There's no evidence they did anything for the money. They didn't get the money for free. So the question is, what did they do for it? And that's what I think congressional investigators should be focused on.
So can you help me understand this rental refund payment from CEFC and then that allegedly got transferred to Joe Biden's rent? I have a personal theory on this, which is, and I'd love your take, that Joe Biden has been and is more involved in the details of Hunter Biden's finances than anyone ever wanted to acknowledge or admit. And Hunter Biden was so controlled by his father that he wanted to make sure that he could show his dad a dollar-for-dollar, one-to-one transfer, that he was not cloak and daggering the money at all. Like, Dad, see, it was $49,510 and you received $49,510. Am I reading too much into that?
It's very, very possible, Charlie. I mean, this story kind of evolves as more material comes up. But I think you're quite right. Hunter Biden and Joe Biden were more tied on these deals than they've acknowledged. And let's remember, Charlie, where this conversation started. In 2018, it was the first time that anybody exposed the Biden's ties to the Chinese in 2018. And the Biden family response was, there were no deals. Hunter had no deals. That ended up not being true. That ended up being a lie. So then they switched to, well, Joe Biden had no knowledge of these deals. He never met with Hunter's business partners. The laptop came out and showed that that was demonstrably false. Now the fallback position has become, and it was sort of spun in a New York Times article last week, well, Joe and Hunter did not ever have joint bank accounts. So that's now become the standard to measure whether they were engaged in business together. It's very, very clear. Joe Biden met with his business partners. He knew what Hunter was doing. Hunter was riding in the wake of what Joe Biden did as vice president. Let's remember the 2 biggest countries where Hunter Biden got deals. he sets up a global financial consultancy with no experience in 2009. And the two biggest deals are in Ukraine and China, both of which happen to be the countries that Barack Obama appointed specifically and publicly.
Just
Joe
it's a
Biden
coincidence. I mean, come on. Obviously, it's just a coincidence. I mean, Joe Biden didn't. He struggled to arrange business deals from Ghana. I don't know why.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
exactly. And Charlie, it's like, where are the deals from London and Tokyo?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Berlin?
The actual financial centers.
Found.
Yeah, the financial institutional non-American centers of industry, right? I mean, maybe could you just throw in a Zurich or a Luxembourg just to pretend like you're doing something legitimate?
Exactly. I mean, it's absurd. And so now we have this situation where the story continued to evolve with the laptop, where you saw very, very clearly in the emails, I talk about it in my book, the New York Post has reported on it, where Hunter Biden, while his father was vice president, was paying his father's bills. He was actually paying in 2014 and 2015, he was paying for renovations on that home in Delaware that we now know later have these classified documents. So the notion that Joe Biden didn't know about his son's business dealings, that he didn't benefit from them, is simply not true. And so the question now becomes, why did the story about these documents leak?
That is the operative question. Yes.
Yeah. And look, I'm speculating here, okay? I don't know. I don't have any inside information, but I think a couple of things are going on. Number one, there is very real concern in the Democratic world about the investigations that are mounting on Capitol Hill. They don't look good. I think the second thing you have at work, Charlie, is politically, a lot of Democrats do not believe that Joe Biden is up to snuff mentally or physically for the 2024 campaign, and they want him out. They're looking for people like, let's say, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, or others to step in. The problem is Joe doesn't want to voluntarily step away, so they're giving him a gentle nudge. That's my theory on what is going on with these documents being leaked. It gives them sort of a middle ground technicality to convince Joe to not run, and it sort of takes off the table in terms of the 2024 campaign issues related to the family's foreign business dealings in China.
Yeah, in some ways, it's a warning shot, right? It's kind of, hey, we're actually in charge. There is a deep state that is just going to remove you at our choosing. But I share your fear here, which is, will there ever be an actual robust investigation into the altering of U.S. policy for personal inurement? That right there, I mean, we have a big T word that should encompass that. And I'm not saying they did it, but they certainly loosely threw that around like a Frisbee when Donald Trump was president. Treason. But I'm not saying Joe Biden did it. I infer and I speculate it. But you have proven through your incredible research, tens of millions of dollars to a buffoon cokehead, let's just be honest, right, that has no business doing international business dealings at all. No services rendered. This guy's not exactly a hedge fund specialist, okay? Right, and then a father who all he had was access and basically a temporary position in government authority. Is that ever going to be investigated?
I hope so. I think we're hearing from Republicans on Capitol Hill that they are going to investigate it. I've been in communication with members of those committees. They certainly have my material and the documents that I have. And I do think this is vitally important, Charlie, because you kind of saw what the position of the Democrats and the mainstream media is going to be on the interview last weekend when Senator Ron Johnson was on NBC News. And Ron Johnson was asked, well, do you have any evidence that Hunter Biden committed a crime? Since when is that the standard of concern? I mean, was that the standard when it came to Donald Trump? That, well, first we have to demonstrate that a crime's been committed. No, I mean, the very point of investigation is to figure out what went on. Yeah. And what the Bidens did is the equivalent of, during the Cold War, we're facing the evil empire of the Soviet Union, and Jimmy Carter's family, or God forbid, Ronald Reagan's family, took $30 million from Russian businessmen linked to the KGB. Now, who is going to say that that should not be investigated? And who's going to say, well, first we have to demonstrate that a crime was committed or we don't care? This is going to be the position of the mainstream media and of the Democrats, and it's a ridiculous standard. So my hope is that the members of Congress leading these committees are going to show fortitude. They are going to meticulously go through this as prosecutors would. In other words, subpoena the documents, get all those suspicious activity reports at the Treasury Department.
Yeah, which
there's more than 150 of them. And let's be clear, Charlie, those suspicious activity reports, they're flagged by the Treasury Department when they are concerned that money is being laundered by either criminal organizations or terrorist organizations.
That's right.
They've got 150 of them.
Could you just imagine maybe around the 85th unusual, just like whoever's running that desk at Treasury. Hey, Earl, we got another one. Yeah, right. I know. How about 104? Hey, Pam, what am I supposed to do here? We flagged another one. I mean, how around the 118th suspicious wire transfer?
It's ridiculous. Charlie, the average businessman who's doing international business deals,
they might get one a decade.
One of these exactly.
And usually, talking to people that have dealt with CFIUS and with this, it's usually cleared up because it's a mistake, but it's taken very seriously. Usually you get like a call from the DOJ, like, we're coming to your office tomorrow, and 8 guys in suits show up. They say, what is this for? It's very serious, and it's money that's usually, it's not flowing from London, Tokyo, or Zurich. I don't know. It's usually from Tehran or from some other clandestine third world country on the 7, countries that we're not allowed to do business with. Okay, Peter, stay right there. I want to talk about that after the break. Just tell our audience about your book, Red Handed. I think it's one of the most important works of journalism in the last couple of years.
Well, thanks, Charlie. Really, it's looking at the question of why has China been basically kicking our butt politically and economically in so many ways, and why does our political class largely, there are exceptions, not want to stand up to them? And the reason is that China has a very sophisticated strategy. It's called elite capture, which is basically they're going to capture our political elite by buying them off. And they've had a lot of success doing that. The first family of the United States, the Bidens, are an example. You could also look at the other side of the aisle and look at Mitch McConnell and his family and find the same thing. It's an enormous problem, not only with our political class in Washington, but with some of the biggest players in Wall Street and Silicon Valley.
And when we welcome radio back after the break, I'm going to play a piece of tape from who I believe is Larry Summers, where he was cautioning at the World Economic Forum any sort of policy that would categorize China as what they really are. I think they're a great enemy. I think they're modern-day Nazis. But even as a competitor, email us freedom@charliekirk.com. But he was basically, here it is. Okay, this is Obama's economic, it was Summers. Didn't Summers run Harvard at some point?
Yeah.
He did. Yeah. Okay, he failed miserably there. Play cut 105.
It would be an enormous and staggering error for the United States to decide that it was its policy to try to suppress Chinese economic growth in the name of our national security. An enormous and staggering error to decide that.
Now, Peter, this is somewhat incorporates our Biden conversation. But when I hear someone talk like that, I know this sounds so cynical. I immediately think, like, how much are you getting paid? Like, I don't think he actually believes this.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. And in Larry Summers' case, I haven't looked at him specifically, but look at the circles that he swims in. Look at the business that he's in, which is finance, Wall Street, economic forecasting. And for the biggest players on Wall Street, China is where the financial action is. Bridgewater Associates is the biggest hedge fund in the world, and Ray Dalio, the head of Bridgewater Associates, sings the praises of Beijing. I mean, he calls the guy who was President Xi's enforcer. This is the guy that would throw people in jail and disappear them. In one of his books in 2018, he calls him this guiding light that is a remarkable force for good on the global stage, and somebody who Ray Dalio has learned so much from. It's a stunning thing. Jeez. The Economist calls the same guy the most feared man in China because he throws people in jail. So why would Ray Dalio, this titan on Wall Street, do that? Well, about a year after that book came out, his company, Bridgewater, became the first Western hedge fund to be able to offer its products in China.
Of course.
That's what selling your soul looks like. And Ray Dalio is not alone. So unfortunately, these are the people that hire Larry Summers and people like him to be consultants.
I want to know how many Aspen mansions were made possible thanks to the selling out of our national security and the integrity of our institutions. My guess would be thousands. So let's just kind of put a bow on this. How do you see this then playing out? Because a concern I do have is just a longer term constitutional concern that the bureaucrats just basically call the shots. I mean, I'm no fan of Joe Biden, but I am not a fan of this kind of deep state maneuvering, fourth branch of government, paper shuffling, especially if there's a negotiation bargain where we're supposed to believe that the paperwork is the high crime and misdemeanor, when in reality, they were playing a game that has civilizational implications.
Yeah, it's an enormous problem, Charlie. You've talked about it, other people have talked about it, but this attitude within government bureaucrats is profound. There was a book I just recently read by two scholars at Johns Hopkins University. They did a survey of more than 2,500 senior executive service people in the federal government, and they asked them a series of questions. One of them was, if there is a policy that a popularly elected president wants to pursue that's constitutional and that you disagree with, would you resist and try to undermine that policy? More than 60% of these unelected bureaucrats said yes, they would.
Unbelievable.
So they don't feel like they're accountable. They don't care the fact that they're not elected. We have got to strip government of power. And I will say, Charlie, that, as somebody who's been sort of disagreeing and battling with the left for decades, I'm starting to see a few glimmers of hope of certain people on the left, certainly not the majority, who realize this monster that they have created.
The Leviathan. Yeah.
Yes. Because their solution to everything, Charlie, has always been more government, more government, more government. And now they realize they don't control it anymore. So there's got to be in this country a reckoning, or we're going to have to make a choice whether we truly want to be a representative government or whether we are comfortable meandering into essentially an authoritarian arrangement where unelected people make the majority of decisions that affect our lives.
No, I will enjoy from afar Joe Biden having to scrap for political relevancy and stay out of prison, while simultaneously being struck with horror that somebody I don't know, that I can't hold accountable, that I never voted for, is actually doing that. That's not healthy. It's not sustainable. And regardless of your political affiliation, we should not put up with it. Peter, thank you so much.
Thanks, Charlie.